format. I want this to be very informal. I want you guys to feel like this is a safe space. You can ask questions. You can, whatever you need to do. You can raise your hand if up at the top in Teams, there's a little raise hand button, or you can type in the chat box if you have questions. And just as we go, I want you to ask them. We're going to start off. I have some veteran directors on here. We have Regina Brown from Letcher County, Tracy Francis from Woodford, Summer Rosa from Fort Thomas, and Wayne Sizemore from Carroll County. And then, of course, Matt Coffey and myself are on here. And then we also have Kim Walters, who is our sort of our IC liaison, who can also help. We've been working on a lot of reports together just to make sure everything's working properly. And this is all new. Like this process is relatively new. Actually, is very new this year. So I want to make sure everybody's comfortable. And if you guys can mute yourselves, that would be helpful, because I'm hearing an echo. All right. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start off looking at or listening to some of the veteran directors, just kind of talk about the process they go through. The thing to remember is every district does this differently. And so it's important to pick up what works for you and what doesn't work for you, don't do. So they're going to talk a little bit, let you guys ask questions. I'll talk a little bit about the reports in Infinite Campus and how I think they should be used. And then we'll go from there. So who wants to start, guys? I'm gonna have to call on somebody. Okay.
I don't care to. I'll start if you want me to, Amy.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Oh, that's okay. Again, my name is Wayne Sizemore, and I'm Director of Special Education with the Carroll County School District in Carrollton, Kentucky. And I guess the first thing that I'd like to tell everyone is to relax and breathe. You will make it through this. It is a very stressful time, but it's a process that once you build your own process, like Amy said, it will become easier. So I'm glad that I appreciate her doing this along with Matt, because I think it's very important for you to hear kind of some different ideas. And as you work through Director of Special Education, and even I'm working on my 16th year of being director, you're still learning tricks of the trade, especially with the way Infinite Campus is now building a lot of their reports. So be very thankful that you have a data system that you're able to pull the information so easily and it's readily available. So once you utilize your systems, once you utilize your reports, I think that you'll see that it is a very seamless process once you build it down. So I'll just kind of share just a couple of things that I usually do throughout the year. And I say year because even though December 1st, we always are scrambling in late November, early December to make sure that everything is done. One thing that I would highly suggest to the group is start your process. And I know now we're in mid-November, but working next year, start your process as early as you can. And there are some districts that will start this process in August, just going through, running your error report, sending out information to your teachers to say, hey, I'm going to be running child count next week. I want to make sure that you get into your caseloads and that you're looking at your IEPs and making sure that everything is locked, making sure all your conference summaries. And I know in our district and in districts before, it's very easy as teachers that we may leave something unlocked inadvertently. So just sending out reminders to your staff as early as you can. That way you're trying to be as proactive rather than reactive when you're running the count. So one thing that I would always do after sending reminders to our staff, making sure that everything is locked. One thing that I would do is I would always ask my teachers to send me some sort of a caseload list of their current students. And I've worked in small districts, and the district that I'm working in now is roughly about 1,900 students. So a very small district. But one thing that I would always do would be to ask for some sort of communication with my teachers to let me know who's on their caseload. This year I did a little differently. I just ran caseload summaries individually off of IC, and I emailed those to each case manager, and I said, I need you to look at your caseload summary, make sure that everyone is up to date, and let me know if there are any deletions. Let me know if there are any students who are not on this child count that need to be added. And the reason why I do that, I want to make sure that when I do run the December 1st child count, I usually try to just spot check just to make sure that the students that our teachers are saying that are on their caseload when we do run the report, that they're on the report. So that's the reason why I try to start as soon as possible, because it can be very timely. In a small district, you're able to do it, but in a large district, I'm sure that you have more people that will assist you with your child count. So just coming up with your system on how are you ensuring that the students that your teachers have on their caseloads are coinciding with the December 1st child count. One of the reports that I really like is the Q&A, the SPED error report. I think that's very beneficial for us, because you're able to go on there and you're able to see if there are any unlocked documents that should be locked, if you have any overlapping IEPs or any errors on top of that. So just learning your IC reports, getting familiar with those, and just getting in and doing it. So those are just some of the kind of ideas that I do as we run child count. And I'll kind of turn it over to the other ladies and let them tell you kind of their process. But learn your process, get your process, and your processes will change from year to year, just because like we are going through this year. The KDE's reporting is a little different, but again, breathe. It will be fine. We'll get through it. But don't be afraid to reach out to directors in other districts, in your co-op regions, and also CASE with Kentucky CASE, because it's always about networking. It's always about making contact, because we're all going through this, and we want to be a resource for each person.
Thanks, Wayne. Regina, you want to go next, or Summer?
Yeah, I'll go next. I don't care
Okay.
one bit. I want to reiterate a lot of what Wayne said. You will get through this. We'll all get through it. It's been the hardest year, even for seasoned directors, to go through child count and all the other things that we're trying to tackle in this pandemic. But what I found, and Wayne stressed it as well, is to develop you a system in which that you can track simple things. Infinite Campus has some great tools available, like the ability to run individual caseloads, or to run caseloads for your whole district or by school. And what I like to do for beginners is I love to print out my caseload and then run active search by school and compare them to make sure that, if my numbers aren't matching, it automatically lets me know that I'm missing somebody. Sometimes it's just as simple as a student has left your district and they're still showing up on active search in red. Sometimes it's overlapping IEPs that you catch by doing that. Or sometimes the dreaded forget to fetch the eligibility to the IEP happens when you run caseload. It's real easy to catch those things. So I encourage you to start early. I know it's closer to child count now, but every year I start doing that like in August. I track my district. I have a master evaluation spreadsheet, and I track my district's evaluations by month and by school and by case manager. And as that evaluation moves through the process, I notify each school of where that evaluation is in the process, as in which evaluator, whether it be the one giving the academic assessment or the one giving the psychological, and where it's at for them, so that they'll know when to plan on having their meeting. I track referrals the same way, and then I also update my staff on when annual reviews are due, and try to nudge them to hold them a little bit earlier. And so with me, it's just a daily check with caseload against active search. That's one way to find a lot of missing errors for child count. Another is to the Q&A report that Wayne mentioned. It is very, very helpful when you run that. And the unlocked IEP report is extremely helpful in finding those kids that aren't locked, because they won't count if they're not locked. And so, and then the other valuable tool is child count itself. When you run the child count error report, automatically pops up and shows you those kids and what errors that they have. And as as I said, I start doing that back in August, but as it gets closer to October, I start giving my district weekly, and then as it gets closer to the end of October, 1st of November, daily updates as to where we're at on reevals, referrals, annual reviews, etc., so that we're keeping it well under taps. But like Wayne said, I'm in a smaller district. Our district has almost 3,000 students, and about 915 of them are mine. And so in a large district like a Jefferson County, that would be impossible to do. But for a smaller district, it's pretty manageable. So if you are a director in a small district, good, that's a good system to utilize. But as Wayne said, we're going to get through this. It is very stressful. I probably would not stress enough that the other great thing that you can always do is to phone a friend. I've called Wayne a lot, called me, and we've got a bunch of other buddies that we don't care to pick the phone up. But we're a support system with each other, because we don't have anybody else to ask how to do this job but ourselves. And so just lean on each other. If you need anything, don't hesitate to contact one of us. Thank you, Amy.
Sorry, it's having trouble finding my unmute button. Thank you, Regina and Wayne.
Amy, you want me to jump in now, or
yes,
do you want
please.
to
Nope,
see if there's any questions?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and jump in, and then we'll see if there are any questions, and then we'll let Tracy talk.
Okay. I guess just to reiterate, I know you guys probably don't want to hear this over and over again, but there is no perfect way to do child count, in my opinion. There's, lots of tips and tricks that people learn over the years, but I don't know that there's necessarily going to be, we're not going to be able to give you the magic bullet or, the answer to all of your questions. Just some of the things that I found helpful is they're listed on Amy's screen that she has shared here, some of them at least. And Regina and I had talked about this before previously, that keeping that separate spreadsheet, because you never know when Infinite Campus might go down, or it might pull inaccurate data just based off of different things that are entered. And so one thing that I found really helpful over the years is keeping that separate spreadsheet of all of your students that are in special education. I know that it may take a while to develop that, get that going. And then, the work that goes into keeping that updated each time there's a change. But it really gives you great information to be able to cross-reference your December 1 count. And so we have not only the master for the district as far as a spreadsheet is concerned, but also by school. And we do those in Google Docs. And so all of the special education teachers have access to those to be able to make updates on their own. I know that there was some talk of maybe delegating and the best ways for different folks to be involved in this process, and that's something that has been beneficial, just with regard to the special education teachers keeping responsibility for their own changes that they're making by school on those spreadsheets. We also keep that list of initial evaluations and reevaluations. So again, if there's something that's not locked, then we can go in and make sure that that has been remedied. And again, I know that Wayne and Regina mentioned this as well, but that that QA SPED error report that's been a fantastic tool over these last couple of years. And I know we all have different timelines and different procedures and things like that we follow. But I mean, I start out maybe in September running those different reports each week. And then as we get closer and closer to December 1, I'm running those almost daily just to make sure that we're not missing any students and that any errors can be corrected almost immediately. So good luck to everybody. I know we're all in the same boat and just trying to figure it out and make sure that we're doing it correctly. Again, if there are any questions, certainly reach out to folks that have been doing this maybe a little bit longer, and everybody will just help each other out.
Yeah, that's something about, directors of special ed. Everybody is happy to help everybody else. So, if you have questions, if you don't want to ask me, or if, I don't, every year. I mean, I do this every year, but I do this from a different perspective every year from what you guys do in the districts. So, I think knowing who your CGIC rep is maybe, or just people you're comfortable asking, anybody who's done this before, it's always a good idea just to reach out. People are always happy to help. Are there any questions at this point? I'm not seeing hands raised or anything in the chat. Okay, Amber asked if we could just share information like email address, just so everybody else's. Regina and Amber and Wayne all shared theirs. Wayne is Frank Sizemore because he can't figure out what his name is. So yeah, but they all have their email addresses in there. So do we have a dead period? We don't really have a dead period. One of the things that I said earlier that kind of got misconstrued is that I said to keep people out of Infinite Campus between December 1 and December 1st and December 7th. I didn't really mean that the way it sounded. What I meant was all of the documents that affect the December 1 child count, any documents that span December 1, the evaluation and the IEP, leave those intact. Try to keep people from unlocking those. And if you do that, you should be okay. So the way the reporting is working is whatever is done by close of business every Friday will get updated for the report on Monday, for the validation report. Now, that IDEA December 1 count extract, the one that you guys have been running for, years, the one that you run from your district, that one should match the validation report, the IDEA December 1 federal submission validation report, or whatever that's called, the long one. It should match it exactly, except as of Monday morning. But then any changes you make throughout the week won't show up in the federal submission report. So yeah, you probably want to run the December 1 count extract regularly, and then on Mondays, maybe just check and see if they match up as of close of business Friday. Okay, Tracy, do you want to kind of put in your 2 cents here?
Sure. I'm Tracy Francis. I'm the director in Woodford County. I come from a large scale perspective down to a smaller perspective. I worked as a facilitator or ACC in Fayette County for years. Before I took this job, this is my 4th job as a director. So really, I rely a lot on IC. I have master spreadsheets for specific things, but coming from a large perspective, there was really no way to do it in that format. So really had to be a master of how to use IC to track students. So the first thing I do every year, run those caseloads by teacher, by school, and make sure to look for any missing information, such as missing eligibility or overlapping IEPs or anything on that end. And the next thing from there is go in to make sure there's no unlocked IEPs, because they're not going to pull correctly on any report if you have unlocked IEPs. And then those ending eligibility dates. That's kind of out the gate, August. Those are the things I do. And then throughout from August on, I have, because I'm in a smaller district now, I do have each teacher by school in a Google sheet. And the sole purpose this year is so I know who is virtual and who is in person. And I update that as things change. But that's also a way for us to compare to the caseloads in IC, because students are coming and going so frequently right now, from homeschool back to us, and all kinds of issues that you all are dealing with as well. But just to keep those updated and compare it to the caseload in IC. From the caseload piece, then I do print the Q&A. The thing that is important about IC is you have your built ad hocs you can run, and then you have your state reports you can run. And before the Q&A, we all had certain ad hocs we had built that we ran a lot of. But the Q&A is the go-to. And you have your detailed, you have your error report in there, and you have the aggregated report. So there's different pieces. I look at all 3 of those for each school and compare that to the caseload. I actually think it's important for the teachers to cross-reference that detailed report to their caseloads as a department. So if someone is on there, the goal is to have that student listed once on that detailed report, so we do not count them more than one time. But I think it's important for them to be the masters of their information and their student list. So I print off the caseloads, I print off the detailed report, and I send it to them, make them highlight, hand track, and then bring it back to me. Now, from a Fayette County perspective, a bigger scale perspective, we did that as facilitators or ACCs with the department. So we were the many directors in those schools. So we would pull those caseloads and pull that detailed report, or it was all students in special ed, just a regular ad hoc that we would run, and would compare the two. I think the tricky thing about December 1 as a director is you have your active students in special ed. Those are the only students you can count. You need to make sure those eligibilities are current, and the eligibilities are pulling into the IEPs. Those IEPs are locked, or those pieces will not pull into the main report. But the piece that you get into that's kind of tricky is then you have the next piece of private school, Head Start, your speech and language kids, those private school service plan kids. So knowing who is, how many students you have on your private school service plan, how many students are you serving through Head Start, how many students you have in preschool, and making sure all of that data is correct. That's probably the hardest thing as a new director, to come in and think through that. And I'm not going to lie, every year I have to stop and think, this is a homebound student, not a homeschooled student. This student counter, how do these pieces fall into place? How do we count these students? And I've been doing this for years. I guess that's the main thing, just knowing that you can. The wonderful thing with the Q&A is it's very accurate. It compares to the caseloads. Once you compare all of that, then you do your December 1, you get your error report, make sure you've got your errors cleaned up, and you compare your numbers from your detailed report down to that December 1 count. And that's kind of the process we go through.
Thank you. So I think you've heard from all of them, you know, it's kind of the same, just everybody tracks it a little bit differently. I'm going to kind of go through what is required for eligibility and, sort of talk through that and some of the reports in Infinite Campus. And then, you know, again, if you have questions, feel free to ask, raise your hand, type in the chat box, whatever you want to do. You know, I set this up for you guys specifically, for the newer directors. So please ask any questions that you have. I promise you don't need to be scared of me. I know people are afraid of KDE, but I'm not really one of those people you need to be afraid of. Yeah. Okay.
I will agree with that. Amy is very approachable.
Thank you. I try to be approachable, you know, because this is tough. Like, there's just a lot, and it's December 1 is stressful, but you know, we want to get through it. So, okay. Child count eligibility. So in order for a student to be eligible for a child count, and you've probably heard this before, but it probably never hurts to hear it too many times. So you need an IEP that spans December 1. So you need an IEP that begins before December 1 and ends after December 1. Goes through December 1. You also need an eligibility document that's dated no more than 3 years minus 1 day before December 1. So you have to have an eligible evaluation eligibility document. And then the student has to have a current enrollment in a non-excluded calendar. So those are the 3 things that we look for child count, that the report looks for child count, for a student to be on child count. So these are some reports that you might run. Thank you to Tracy for pulling this together. The IDEA December 1 count extract, that's under Kentucky State Reporting, and it's just IDEA December 1 count extract. That is the report that you want to run probably on a daily basis here pretty soon, to check how you're doing, because that's the report, that's where we get our submission, federal submission validation report from. It comes from the same data set. So that is the report that's going to tell you which kids are going to be counted. I heard a lot of people talk about unlocked IEPs with things missing, that kind of thing. The QA SPED error report is going to give you all that information. If you run that report, it will give you any kid with an excuse me, with an unlocked IEP, any kid with an IEP that has you know, either the setting or the disability or the status missing. It'll give you, I think it'll give you any kid with an overlapping IEP. You don't want them to overlap across December 1st. You don't want to have 2 IEPs on December 1st. If they do, you probably need to end date one of them. It's better not to have any overlapping IEPs, but for child count purposes, what you're concerned about is any that overlap December 1. So that's what the QA SPED error report is going to do. And so if I would run that pretty much daily and say, especially on Friday afternoons, since we are running the federal submission validation report over the weekend, I would make sure all those unlocked IEPs and IEPs with missing data are cleaned up, and that'll tell you how to do it on Fridays before you go home for the weekend. The QA SPED detail report, we actually used that today because there was a kid, we found another glitch in Infinite Campus. There was a kid who had an IEP, both an IEP and an eval that were due before December 1st this year. So I think the eval was due at the end of November and the IEP was expiring this week. And that kid didn't even show up as an error on the report because I see as having that glitch. There aren't many of those, obviously, but we found her on the QA SPED detail report. So that's a really good use for the QA SPED detail report. Just make sure. Now, if a kid had an IEP earlier in the year and has been released, they might also show up on the report, but you're going to see a SPED exit date there. So that's okay. It's okay if they're showing up on there and they're not supposed to, as long as they're not showing up on the IDEA December 1 count extract. Caseload summary is under reports. So there are all kinds of ways to just kind of cross-check, make sure you're not missing any kids. Pre-K and other, so there are actually two reports that happen. There's my child count report, which is for kids ages 3 through 21, and then Andrea Bartholomew in the preschool division of IDEA, I don't know what it stands for, DIP, it's preschool. They have their own child count for preschool. So that goes to them. It's done, we're hoping the two systems will merge pretty soon. We're starting to run them similarly, but theirs counts all preschoolers, mine only counts students with IEPs. So
the thing about the preschool, if you have an ART and December 1, say it's tomorrow, you have to have consent. Do you have to have, this is always the question, do you have to have consent and have them enrolled at the same time, Amy?
That's a good question. Do you have to have consent for services and have them enrolled at the same time?
Yes.
Well, they can be enrolled and not receiving services, I think, but they won't count on child count. They'll just count on the preschool count.
Yes. Yeah, that, and anyone else can chime in here, but that's always very tricky. Like the preschool piece is very tricky.
Yes, it is. And I couldn't get Andrea on this call, but that is a good question. So if you want, we can talk to her and figure that out and send out an email. Okay. Any other questions? So we'll follow up on that and get back to you on that. Okay, so these are the reports that we have in Infinite Campus. The enrollment report, okay, we have another question about preschool. Same question, I assume, right, Jenny? Like, you just want to know how that works, the timing and everything? Okay. So the enrollment report, SPED is pretty cut and dried, but not preschool. Okay. That's the first time I've heard that. I thought it was the other way around. Let's see. So the caseload report is basically, the enrollment report, I think if this is what I'm thinking of, is basically you just go in here into Infinite Campus, choose your school, click advanced search, select all students who are active, and then do a search. And that'll show all kids who have been enrolled this school year. If they're red, that means they're no longer enrolled this school year. So that's just something to be aware of. Anybody? So is that's what you were talking about, right, Regina, with the advanced search? Okay. So these two right here, the December 1 count extract and the December 1 federal submission validation, that's going to have the same exact data. On Monday morning, it's going to have the same exact data, except for students who are enrolled in 2 different districts. So let's say a kid is in Fayette County and he has an IEP and he leaves Fayette County on November 25th and he moves to Woodford County and he enrolls in Woodford County. Did I say February? November 25th. And so he enrolls in Woodford County on November 25th. So Fayette County may not know he's missing. So they may not end his enrollment. But if he enrolls in Woodford County on November 25th, then he's going to show up. He would, in the old days, show up on both reports. But now he's going to show up on the one that has the latest enrollment. So if a kid is not showing up on your report, it's most likely because he enrolled in another district. And then in that case, call me and we can work it out. I can look that up and let you know. The other situation is if a kid is enrolled in 2 different districts simultaneously. So let's say Kentucky School for the Blind and Jefferson County. And so he would have a primary enrollment in one and a secondary enrollment in another. So the primary enrollment is where he's going to show up, not the secondary enrollment. So if you have questions about that, again, contact me. We'll have to work it out with the 2 districts that are claiming him or her, and we'll figure it out from there. So those are the tiebreakers. But the thing is, any changes made between Monday and Friday, or actually Saturday and Friday, are not going to appear on the federal submission validation report until the next week. So that's why you want to run the December 1 count extract kind of more, throughout the week. QA SPED, I talked about that, caseload summary, and enrollment. Okay. So that's about all I've got. But I know you guys
Amy,
have, yes.
Amy, let me add something back on the error report. So use your error report, and this is just a suggestion. Use your error report as teachable moments with your staff. And it's hectic right now. But as you start going through your error reports and as you're trying to rectify those, clean those up, conduct meetings, make notes of the staff that maybe have the most errors that you're having to go back and forth, and use those as an opportunity to train your staff on, eligibility determinations, making sure that they understand the process of locking the eligibility form and then updating the enrollment tab and putting that information in there. So it's very hectic right now, but once you get that process, again, use this as a training opportunity for your new staff and your seasoned staff, because they will make errors as well. But I just want to add that in there.
That's a good point. So what questions you guys have? You got 4 directors and 3 K-to-E people here that have been through, 2 of us have been through Child Count a bunch. One is new to the process, but she's been helping me with all the reports. So what do you got?
I'm having trouble with the chat box letting me type in it, but I was just wondering if you could show us what the IDEA December 1 count extract looks like when you pull it up, because my extract, when I'm pulling that up, it's showing errors, but it's not giving me the report like the federal submission. And so I don't know if I'm selecting the wrong
Nope,
thing.
You're selecting the right thing. So what you need to do there, let me see if I can get
Have you clicked generate report yet?
Yeah. Yeah, so when you run this, oh, sorry. When you run it, and I have to be very careful here. Nope, not that one. This is the one you should be running, IDEA December 1 count extract.
Mm-hmm.
And then you highlight all the schools and you click generate extract, which I can't do because it's going to show student names. So here, let me see if I can move it over here and do that. And then when you do that, up at the top, it'll say, what does it say? It says, oh, here, there are no errors on this one. It'll say there are errors and or warnings in the extract, and then they'll show down here.
Mm-hmm.
But then you need to click here to generate the final extract.
Okay, and that doesn't matter if I do that early.
No.
Okay.
No, final extract is kind of a, that's kind of a bad choice of words. But basically it just means generate the extract. And then it's going to download a spreadsheet somehow. Like either it'll show up down at the bottom at the very bottom of your screen, or it'll just pop up. It depends on how you have your browser set up, unfortunately. But it'll give you a spreadsheet, and that'll list all your students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Amanda, one thing that you can do as well is when you generate that, what I do is kind of a common practice for me. I'll run it at least a couple of times a week, but I'll generate it and then I'll save it and I'll date it for the date that I've saved. So for instance, today I ran child count and I dated it for, whatever, Carroll County School District, December 1st child count, and I dated it for 11/16/20. And what I do with that is it's just again, my process that I may run it in 3 days, and I'll just make sure that if there are any additions, that I kind of just go back and forth and see, were those students added, were they not? And this just, again, my process that I've always done.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a question, are we still going to upload our final count into the DOS secure network? No, you're not. So this year it's different for everyone. What I'm going to do is I'll be sending out an email. It'll have a sort of a survey in it or a little form you're going to fill out that's going to say that you have validated, you've reviewed the data, and I'll probably ask you to enter numbers like how many FMD, how many MMD, and so on, just so I make sure what you submit matches what we have. I mean, what you have matches what we have. But that's really just for verification purposes, because it should match because we're looking at the same exact report. So I'll do that, and then that's all you'll have to do. So there won't be any submission this year like you used to do, where you had to upload it to the DOS secure file server. Just a survey. Just if you were, I think you were in the district last year, and I sent out at the end of the year, I did a exiting survey and a discipline survey. It's going to be just like that, probably with a little more information, but the same type of thing. So I don't know if we've helped or not.
I have a question.
Yep.
I had a student that was a speech only, or is a speech only student, and so he was evaluated 1 year and he was eligible for speech. Then the next year he was evaluated for DD but did not qualify. So then when they filled out that eligibility form, I guess it,
Yeah, it looks at the last one.
so what do I do for that? Because now there's nothing's
I can
going
answer that if you'd like me to, Amy.
Go for it.
Okay, so the way I've had to break my teachers of this, and that's exactly what you're going to have to do, is there's 2 eligibility sections on that eligibility document. The first one is where they choose the actual eligibility form for a disability that they are suspecting or already are and are reevaluating for. So there is where they would choose speech and say that they're not eligible, or DD and say that they're not eligible. The final eligibility tab, the last one, is where you make them eligible in the area they're going to remain eligible in.
Okay.
And so if you didn't do the evaluation simultaneously, and you would put the date in there that eligibility was originally determined for speech, because it doesn't change and their eligibility for speech is still going to be the same.
Okay.
And so it's just an error, for lack of a better term, a typo error on the part of the ARC. They shouldn't have used that last tab to put DD not eligible in there, because their eligibility form already covered it.
Okay. So then do I need to go back? I mean, can I go back into that eligibility? What do I need to do to remedy that?
Well, I would go back in there, and it's a non-pragmatic change. It's a typo.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Amy may not agree with me, but that's how I would do it.
Sorry, I was answering Summer's question. What was the last part of that? I heard most of it.
When the ARC met to determine the eligibility for DD and found that they were not eligible for DD, they filled out the eligibility form for DD and showed that they were not eligible. But when they went to the eligibility tab that's under that on the eligibility document, there's 2 of them. The second one's where you put the date and the disability. They put DD and not eligible instead of leaving the speech eligibility and the speech eligibility date there.
Gotcha. Yep, that's exactly what I would say to do.
And I told her just to go in there and fix it.
Yep.
And that's what I do. It's a habit that you have to teach your staff. And what I do to break that habit, and like I said, once again, I'm a smaller district, but when we have a kid that's suspected of a second disability, like say their speech, and we suspect that they may be DD, when we get consent to evaluate, we get consent to evaluate for all. And if speech is more than, is more recent, then we get existing data and make them eligible for everything at the same time. That way they're all in the same timeline and we're not meeting 500 times on one child.
Okay.
That is exactly how it should be done.
Thank you.
So Summer asked me if I could show what the validation report looks like. This is what it looks like. You can find it. I'm hearing from people that they don't have access to it. It's extremely important that all directors of special education have access to this. They need to talk to their cases administrators. It is under KY state reporting, KDE reports, IDEA December 1 federal submission validation. This is in just about every email I've sent out and just about every webinar I've done in the last several months. But you've got to have access to this. So you're going to click on this, and then you've got the detail report or the aggregate report. And this is what the detail report looks like, obviously without student information, because we don't want to share student information. But it'll have the district number, district name, all this information here. So these are the elements that we'll use when we report. And then the aggregate just shows an aggregate of, so it just shows like the total numbers, basically. If I can, there we go. Nope. Did it not run?
I think you accidentally hit the detail again.
Oh, good. Yeah, I want to show off all that information. There we go. Okay. Not really Knox County, it's a scrambled staging site.
Also, while you're looking at that, I just want to kind of give a heads up to larger districts. They might want to run these reports earlier in the morning.
Yes.
By the end of the day or the middle of the day, Infinite Campus just gets too much and it'll time out.
Well, and changes are going to happen, you know, so.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, first thing you do on Monday morning.
Yep. So that's what that looks like. So probably what I'm going to ask you for is this top row here. Those numbers. So in the survey I send out. Okay, any other questions? Oops.
Amy, I know that when there were questions submitted before we started this, there were some about specific errors on the December 1 count. I don't know if we need to go through ways to fix each of those or how to address those.
Good idea.
Just a suggestion. I don't know.
Yep. Okay, so running the report, which we've kind of talked about. Overlap status, which I also kind of talked about, making sure it counts all sped kids. So I think we've covered that. Reports, how to analyze and compare the reports. So there, I think what you want to do is probably run your child count report, like your IDEA December 1 count extract, and then compare it to caseload. If there are kids not showing, then I would run the QA error report and the QA detail report and kind of see which kids are on there that aren't showing up on the others, and if you can maybe figure that out. That would be my suggestion. Does anybody else have any other suggestions when it comes to that? Just when things don't match up.
You might want to run the error report first, so then you can go ahead and fix any errors, the QA sped error report, and then compare those to child count or to caseload.
Yeah.
Because then you'll catch, somebody
point.
just mentioned, you know, that you'll catch any documents that are unlocked, or if the incorrect setting is showing up, or there's a missing eligibility or that sort of thing. I don't know, that's just my input.
That's a good point. And one thing I will say about the QA error report that I just thought about is it only shows unlocked IEPs. It does not show unlocked evals. So for what that's worth, I don't know what to tell you about that. So delegating, I don't know how to delegate, so I'm not the person to be asking about that. But I think Wayne and Regina talked a lot about that, about how to, you know, use these reports as kind of teaching moments and kind of give them some responsibility, give your teachers responsibility on, you know, how to go about this and make sure, give them some skin in the game.
Question
About delegating.
One thing that I've done that's very, very helpful is at each school I have appointed, they don't get any extra money or anything. I just love on them a whole lot, make them cinnamon rolls every once in a while. But I've appointed a department chair of my special ed department at each individual school. And so I try to send out information through them because those are the most seasoned or valued as far as knowing the paperwork people I've got in the building. They help the other teachers in the building and kind of mentor them, not just for child count, but all year long. But that's one way that I delegate. I'm a control freak, so it's hard for me to delegate, but I also know the story of Moses and Jethro. So I've learned to give, Moses has learned how to give people things to do. Even in a district of my size, it's impossible for me to do what I do every day without running out of fuel and running out of time and being on blood pressure medicine. So you guys have to be willing to find somebody that you can trust to help you run some of this stuff. If it's just your secretary looking at caseloads for holes in it, that cuts down on your time and allows you to focus on something a whole lot more serious. I rely heavily on those I've placed as department heads in my building, and I can email them and say, okay, I've checked caseload to active search, and you're showing one more on active search than you're showing on caseload. Can you help me find it? Or, and then I trickle that down to individual teachers when I need to as well. And then I use it as a teaching moment, like Wayne said. We're always, even though we're no longer in the classroom, we're always instructors, and we make them better by helping them learn and grow and foster the new knowledge of that paperwork.
One thing I'll add to Regina, one thing that I'll always do when I run error report, I'll send emails, individual emails to the teachers, and I'll just say, I was running child count early. I came across this IEP or conference summary that was unlocked. Make sure that you lock that. And I'll CC the building principal, or if there is an AP that is kind of over special education for that school, I'll CC them in there as well. And there's an accountability piece, and that's the reason why I do that. When principals start getting X number of emails from you each week, then sometimes they'll step in and make sure that it gets done the appropriate way. So it's not delegating, but it kind of is. But just make sure that your principals are aware of those errors, especially if they're chairing those meetings. They'll make sure that those are rectified if there's enough heat that's put on them.
And to kind of bounce off of both of them, I do have department leads that are paid a stipend at each of my secondary levels, so my middle school and my high school. I am a district with only one middle school and one high school, so it's a large number of students and staff. That's why there's a stipend there. At the elementary level, I run it like a PLN, or they get together and there's a timekeeper, there's someone with the agenda, there's someone with the task, and then action items to follow up from that. So everyone is involved in that, and it makes it equitable, but also everyone feels like they are valued in that process and they have a role. That's kind of an important thing at my elementary schools. And then for my MSD program across the district, I do have an MSD lead. They had never gotten a stipend before, but they actually do. It started last year because I do not have an assistant director. It is just me and my preschool sites, so there's no way to man everything. So you do have to delegate in the ways that Regina and Wayne spoke of. I think we all do the same thing, we just do it a little different.
Yep, sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, you have to have people take ownership. And I'm probably the worst about that because I'm sending out emails this week to every single director of special education, because almost every district, well, not every, we've got some, but most districts have students with LRE mismatches with their grades, like they have 5-year-olds in kindergarten with a LRE starting with 3. And we have 1,200 of those across the state, and I'm going to send out emails to every director instead of making the directors be responsible for it. So, you know, but there's also that we want to make sure it gets corrected. So, so I think making sure all kids are accounted for, I think we're in that. I think we've talked about that. Timelines. Now, all these directors, all these seasoned directors have talked about doing this since August. I texted Matt when this started and said some of these people haven't even been in their positions for a month. So I realized that, please don't panic when they say that. You know, you deal with the cards you're dealt. So I'll help you through it.
Yeah, I'm with Amy. Don't panic. This is doable. You just have to figure out, these are the reports I'm running. This is the structure I have in place, and be consistent with that, and pick that one or two people to support you that know exactly what you're doing, that can go in there and check for things. Maybe assign someone to check for the unlocks or the eligibilities missing, and just kind of come up with a process. It's definitely doable though.
And since you're not submitting anything, I mean, there is going to be a child count. Like, I'll have data. It's just whether, you know, you just want, it's just your job to make sure nobody's missed. And also really make sure nobody's on there that shouldn't be, because that, you know, that can also be a concern. So what information from student record exactly pulls from child count to make it show up? So the answer to that is, it looks at it has to have unlocked evaluation. And in the evaluation, you have to have the date of eligibility determination and the disability. And then in the IEP, it looks at the special ed status. It looks at the LRE, I think it's called special ed setting in the IEP, and it looks at, what am I forgetting? Status, LRE, disability. So the disability has to be pulled in from the evaluation document. So those are the 5 things that you have to have. Those documents have to be locked, and you have to have those pieces in place. So students who have an IEP end date on or before the effective date. So basically that just means if you have kids that have IEPs that are ending before December 1, they're not going to show up on the report. So you need to get them new IEPs or, you know, whatever. Finding errors in child count. Let's see, different types of reports. Learning strategies and cleanup data. I can't scroll on this thing. There we go. Child count preschool. Well, I'll have Andrea talk about that. If a student has been receiving oh yeah, I think we talked about this one specifically. Child count procedures and helping with training. So I think we covered all the questions. What do y'all think? Do you still have questions?
I'm going to say something. Amy can plug her ears for a second. But if you do have an IEP that's about to end, and you need to have an ARC to keep them eligible because their eligibility is current, you have an ARC and say, we're going to meet again, and you plan, you know, you go ahead and schedule that next ARC, and you're rolling that IEP over until you can have an appropriate ARC to address the needs of the new IEP as needed. That is one way of doing it. You have to, the verbiage on that has to be very strategic. So if anyone has that situation, and you need the help with that, feel free to call me or email me, and I'll help you do that.
And something that I want to say along those lines is, honestly, with COVID going on, like we're kind of making allowances that the important thing is documentation, documenting that you're doing the right thing. We don't want paperwork to keep a kid from counting on child count if the student is still receiving services. Does that make sense? Like, if you're providing services to the kid, if they already had an IEP and maybe it's going to expire and you can't get the parents in for you know, the ARC or whatever, just document what you're doing, document that you're trying to get the parents in, document whatever you need, and do what's appropriate. But we don't want to take money away from you because an IEP ended because of COVID. Child count data isn't pulled from what's in the preschool tab. I don't think. I'm pretty sure it's not.
I'm pretty sure
It's not. I typed before I thought. It's pulled.
Okay.
It's pulled from Infinite Campus, just like your child count data. So when you run your error reports, they should show up on your error report just like the K through 12 special ed students. And so your 97, 98, and 99 should show up on caseload, should show up on everything else that you're running for child count. But for KEDS purposes, Jeannie, it will need to be also, your preschool tabs have to be updated out for KEDS data.
Yes.
And also, there is one thing. When you run the report, your at-risk population will pull from that preschool tab. So there are components of that will compare with, that will pull for your preschool count. It just won't, it's not directly for your disabilities.
Okay. So Jenny, what I might do is, did somebody else ask about preschool also? Or was it mostly just Jenny? What I might do is set up a meeting with you and me and maybe Tracy, since she was asking about it, and Andrea, and anyone else who wants to email me and say they want to be involved. And Andrea Bartholomew is the one over the child count, the preschool report. And then that way she can help answer questions as well. Today is like a crazy day. Like, everybody's double booked all day, so it was hard to get people in here. But we can definitely set something up for later. Wow, October 12th. So you've been here a whole month and 4 days. That's, yeah.
Jeannie, you might need prayer instead of anything else. That's big.
Kidding.
You might need some cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
Get on that, Regina. Send us all
Yeah.
cinnamon rolls.
I want to tell you something, Jeannie. Preschool's the bear. It's the thing that I don't enjoy the most about my job title, that not counting all the unofficial job titles we all have.
Exactly. I'm with you. It just is so tricky. Preschool makes you think a whole lot harder than everything
It'll
else.
make you feel any better. I had a exposure in my preschool on Wednesday and Thursday, and now one whole preschool of my 2 has a 14-day quarantine. If it'll make you feel any better.
I don't know about you guys, but this whole quarantine thing is just messing everybody up because some people are on, some people are off. It's a mess.
It's impossible.
It is.
It is. Along those lines, I've had to shut down an MSD program at the high school for a week last week. And
Yep.
And then to this last night at 5 o'clock, I was scrambling to shut down and go virtual with my elementary MSD programs because
Really?
of not enough staff to run it.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the big problem, is not having substitutes. And then there was a substitute filling in for my preschool teacher because she was quarantining, and now she's been exposed and is quarantining.
Jeez.
Yes, I'm feeling you right there with you all. It's craziness.
Well, hang in there, guys. So I did, Chris Thacker told us today he heard that 2 different companies have vaccines that are 95 point some percent effective, and that by April, if we all wear masks and enough people get vaccines, we can be back to normal. I don't know what normal is anymore, but I'll
I
take.
don't know what that is, but we'll take it.
I know, I'll take close to normal. My kids are just praying we have a tennis season, so. All right, well, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or anyone, anyone here in the chat. And we're happy to help. Again, I don't do this from the district perspective, but I can help you troubleshoot things in IC all day long. And if I can't, Kim and Matt can. So, and I can probably connect you with somebody in a district who could help you as well. So, thank you guys for your time. And yeah, so I'll let you guys get the rest of your day back and let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks.